starts from the very beginning, from data import to data cleaning to data modeling and finally visualizing our data. Before I start, however, I wanted to set expectations and tell you what this video is about and what it will contain. This video is made for business users, people who are just getting into data analysis and reporting using Power BI. I myself come from a business background. I worked in project management and a bit in finance. I learned Excel first and then naturally progressed to Power BI. So in this video, I will try to come from the Excel mindset and use the everyday business language as much as possible. This is not going to be a technical video, but something that everyone can understand and follow along. Now, when it comes to building a Power BI report, we always follow certain steps. Obviously, depending on your company's setup and data architecture, these steps can vary, but they all fall within these categories: importing data, cleaning and transforming data, modeling data and creating a business logic, visualizing a report, and then finally sharing reports with others. These steps are not only for Power BI, but also for other BI and visualization tools such as Tableau, Qlik, and even Excel. Now let's take a look at the files, our data source that we're going to be using in this video. I went to Kaggle and found this car sales dataset. I cleaned it a bit and added a few little things here and there. I will be including the sample dataset in the description section. Each row in this table is a unique record that represents a sale of a certain car, with a vehicle ID number, VIN, a couple of dates, right? The date of manufacturing and the sale date, condition, price, state where this was sold, and stuff like that. Now we also have a separate table which is called a DIM model. And this table includes the details of cars that were sold. So we have the model name, the brand, the body type, and transmission. Now we have looked at these Excel files, let's open Power BI Desktop and import these two Excel files into our Power BI. Here's my Power BI Desktop, and once I'm here, I will click Get Data, indicate the location of the Excel files that I want to load into my Power BI. So it's going to be Get Data, Excel Workbook. No, it's actually going to be a text because these are CSV files I'm importing, and I'm going to indicate where my files are located. One of them is called Fact Car Sales. It's actually an Excel file, apologies. And the other one is a CSV file, which is DIM model. Let's start with the Fact Car Sales. In the Navigator window, I'm going to indicate the table that I have in my Excel file. So automatically Power BI will detect either a sheet with data, or if you have a table, then you will choose a table. In my case, I have a table already sitting in my Excel file, and then I'm not going to click Load. I will transform data. Most likely, you will always need to transform your data before loading, unless it's a clean data set that you're importing from a database. If you're importing data from Excel or CSV, it's almost always you have to click Transform Data so you can clean and transform data before loading it into your model. When I click Transform Data, Power BI takes me into the Power Query editor. Power Query is a tool which helps to connect, combine, clean and transform data from different sources. If you have been using Excel, you probably know what that is. Power Query is a very powerful tool that has a lot of functions and uses its own programming language called M. But in this video, we will not be getting into details too much. Our sample data set is pretty clean as is. Therefore, I will do a few little formatting changes and show you how to clean and transform data. Now, the very first thing I like to do is to give a proper name to this table. This is my Fact Car Sales table, like that. This is important, especially if you have a lot of different tables, right? So it's important to keep the naming convention, to name your tables in a way that when you have a lot of different tables, you know exactly which table you're using. Obviously, in this video, we're only going to be using 2 tables, so it's not as important. But in reality, you may have a lot of different tables from different sources with different data sets, right? It's really important to give a proper naming convention so you're not lost and confused trying to understand which data is which, right? So after this, I will make sure that all of my data sources are accurate. I will check these little icons in my column headers. For example, this is date and this is text, right? ABC is text and this is obviously date. The model key should be text. So I will change the model key to text and do replace current. I'm doing this because what Power BI does, if you have a numeric value, Power BI wants to always aggregate the numeric values. Since the model key is not a numeric value, it should not be a numeric value, right? I cannot be aggregating the IDs of my cars, so that's why I'm going to set it as a text. So the state is obviously a text. Condition is a number, so I have condition from 1 to 5. I guess this is 1 being a good condition and 5 being an older car. So these 2 things here are the selling price and odometer. These are set as whole numbers. Now, I would like to change these to decimal numbers. Because if you're having, especially the numbers have to do with price, they preferably should be in decimal format. Because if you have a decimal format, then you can create averages and you can create proper financial calculations. So to do this, I will make sure that my odometer and my selling price are set to decimal. The color is obviously a text. It's all good. All right, and the next step, I will clean the columns. I can see that the transmission and the state, the state column here is spelled with small letters. And I would like to have them state as capital letters, right? Because these are the 2-letter code for each state, and these codes are normally in capital letters. So to change this, I will right-click on this column header, and then go to transform, and then use uppercase. And this is going to change these letters into big letters, into capital letters, like this. And now the same thing with the color column. I can see that the names of colors are spelled with small letters, and I want them to be spelled with capital letters for a good, consistent look. So I will do capitalize each word. And this is going to turn proper spelling, right? Now I'm good. And lastly, I will modify my sale date column. This is a text right now. This looks like a timestamp, which probably comes from an ERP system, which captures date, time, and even a time zone. Since we're analyzing car sales, right, not pizza orders, we don't really have to worry about the exact second when each sale happened. All we need to know is really just the date of a sale. So that's why we will have to transform this column and turn it into a proper date column. If I click on this ABC sign, and if I picked the date here, if I wanted to transform this into a date, I will have an error. And if I click on this error, it's going to tell me that, the Power BI couldn't parse the input provided as a date value. So in other words, Power Query cannot recognize this long text string right here. This is a text string, right? It sees it as a text string and it cannot recognize that this could be a date. And that's why it's giving us an error. So that's why we will have to do certain modifications to turn this long text string into something that resembles a date. So then Power Query Engine can recognize it as a date and turn it into a date. So let's look at this column. We have a long text string with a weekday, space, month, space, day, space, etc. So we can see that everything here is separated by space. Now we can split this column into several parts, And then we will delete the parts that we don't need and then merge together the actual dates into a separate column. Let's do this. So what I will do is we will right-click on this column and then choose the function called split column. We're going to be splitting it by delimiter. And in this case, our delimiter will be space. Power Query automatically detected the delimiter, and we are going to be splitting it at each occurrence of a delimiter. There are different options, right? So if I wanted to separate only the days of the week, I could have used, the leftmost delimiter. But in this case, I would like to split this column into many different parts at each space. So I'm going to click OK. And this is going to split my column into several columns. So from here, I'm going to delete, I don't need the day of the week. I can add that later in my calendar table. So we're going to take a look at it later. So I'll select the day of the week. I will select the time zone, right? And then what's that? Yeah, the Eastern Pacific time zone. I don't need these details. So what I will do, I will right click and then delete these columns, remove columns. So now I am left with the month, day, and then year. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these three columns, and we're going to merge these three columns into one column, which will resemble a date column. So after selecting these three columns, we're going to right click and then do merge columns. The separator is going to be, we can choose anything really, but I just prefer to do space because the Power Query engine can easily recognize that it's a date format. And the name of the new column, which will appear as the result of a merge, I'm going to call this date of sale. And now if I go back here, I have this column. I have the name of a month, date, and then year. So this should be enough for the Power Query engine to realize that it's a date. And I'm going to click here and then choose date. And here it is. Power Query now is able to understand that it's a date. So all of my dates are now in a normal format. I'm using the US format. If you live in other countries, right, your dates will be in a different format with days coming first and then month. But either way, Power Query will recognize that this is a date column. And now one other thing what we're going to do is, because this is a sample data set and I don't have good data for other years, for 2014, for example, what I am going to do is I will right click and then, not right click, I'm going to come here to the filtering button, right? I'll select date filters, I choose between, and I will filter out all of the years except 2015. Because I know that in my data set, I only have good data for 2015. We are not going to be importing other years. So here, that's going to be is after, and the date is going to be 12/31/2014, and then is before is going to be 1/1/2016. So I am trying to filter my data so it includes all the dates from 2015, all the dates after December 31st and before January 1st, 2016. All right, it should be good. Now I should have all the dates from 2015 only. I can check that by, for example, sorting it by ascending, just to double check, right, if I filtered it properly. Here we go. My first date is January 1st, 2015. And then my last date should be December 31st, 2015. And then when I sorted it descending, I actually found out that the last date of sale in 2015 was July 14. Either way, right? I only have the 7 month in 2015 data. All right, I'm done cleaning this file. Again, this is our fact table, right? And each row of this table is a unique record that represents a sale of a certain car. So I have VIN vehicle IDs that are unique values, right? And then I have other additional information about the car that was sold, such as date when it was manufactured, a date of sale, price, and other information. Now the next step is to add our second table, dim models. I can click to new source, and then I'm going to click to text and CSV. I believe that was a CSV file, and then find my second table, dim model, and import it into Power Query. This will take some time, and then I will click OK. This is a small table, right? I don't have any complex data here. Click OK, and this will be imported into into Power Query right here. So I can call this dim model. It's a dimension for my models, and here all of this data is clean. All I wanted to change is change my model name, my model ID to text, because right now this is a number. And what's important is my model ID should be a text in both of my tables, in my fact table and in my model, in my model table. So after changing this to text, everything else looks good, right? The model name, the brand, the body type, and the transmission are all text values. Once I'm done cleaning and transforming my tables, so I only have two tables, fact, car sales, and dimension for model. The dimension table, I can come to the Home tab on here and then click Close and Apply. After you click Close and Apply, Power BI will start loading your tables into Power BI and creating a data model out of it. Now, what is a data model, right? Let's quickly talk about this. A data model in Power BI is a structured representation of the relationships between different data tables and fields. The data model is a place where you organize, relate, and enrich your data to build a foundation for creating your report. In the data model, you can also create calculations and measures based on your business logic, and we will do that a little bit later. Now, let me give you a simple analogy. Think of data sources like building materials, like bricks, wood, glass, whatever. And in this case, the data model will be a blueprint of a house that you're building. Each room represents a table that has different data and functions. And just like in a house, you have a kitchen for cooking, a bedroom for sleeping. In the same way, tables in your data model contain different types of data. In the house, you also have hallways and doors that connect rooms. And these are relationships in a data model. Relationships, or these connections between tables, allow data to be connected and flow between tables. So in our model, we have two tables right now, right? The fact, sales, and one dimension table for model. Let me go here. And if I open the model view, these are my tables. In our model, we have two tables right now. The fact sales table and one dimension table. Our model has a very simple structure. The fact table is the main table in our database, or in any database pretty much, that contains the quantitative data for analysis. So in simple words, these are basically facts. Each row in a fact table is a separate transaction or event. In our example, each row is a car sale that took place at a certain time, certain place, and certain price. And dimension tables contain descriptive attributes related to the fact table. These attributes provide context to the facts and are used to filter the data in the fact table. So in our example, the model dimension table includes the details of each car model, the body type, transmission, and brand. In simple words, the fact table tells you what happened and how much, while the dimension tables tell you who, what, where, and when these facts happened. Now, we're using the database design technique called normalization. We're organizing our data to minimize redundancy and improve data integrity. Look at my very simple example here. I have car sales here, transaction number, date when that happened, and model key. Now, instead of keeping all the car details information in one table and duplicating it for each transaction, we can create a separate table, dimension table right here, in which we can store all the details about cars. The dimension table has unique records for each car, and these unique records are the primary keys in this table. On the other hand, the fact table, right here, has the keys, which we call foreign keys, and they identify a unique record in the dimension table. So we can connect these two columns and create a relationship. So right here, if you look at the relationship here, I have the model ID connected to the model key. And my relationship is one to many. So the model ID is a unique value, is a primary key. I only have one record of each model in my dimension table. And obviously in my fact sales table, I have many of those models sold. And if I go back to my other example here, I can see that I have four, and four, so 3 times. The car with the ID number 4 was sold 3 times. And so this particular car, Chevrolet, I sold it 3 times. I can have many sales of one car in my sales table. But instead of recording all of this information again and again in my fact table, instead, I'm using the data model and I'm putting this additional information to my dimension table. Lastly, each data model in Power BI must have a date table or a calendar table. The date table is required for all calculations that involve time. For example, if you would like to do proper filtering by year, month, weeks, and have time intelligence calculations, for example, month-over-month growth or running total, then you have to have a proper date table. Often, a date table is already available in your database if you're connecting to a database. If not, then you're going to have to create it manually. There are several ways to create a date table. You can create it at the database level, you can use the Power Query editor, but I'm going to show you the easiest way, which is using DAX to create a date table at the data model level. Real quick, DAX is a data analytics language used in Power BI. There's a lot of information about DAX available online, so I do not want to spend too much time explaining what that is. Instead, we will start using some basic DAX formulas right away. Right? For those of you who know Excel, a lot of DAX formulas will resemble and feel familiar to you. So the first thing we're going to do using DAX is to create our date table. To do that, you need to go to the table view. Once you are in the table view, under the Table Tools tab, search for the button New Table. Right here. So I'm going to click, and that's going to start the creation of a new table. Right here. So I'm going to call this column for this table, for this new table that I'm creating, date. And let me zoom in a little bit so you can see my formulas better. And the formula is simple. It's called calendar. And this formula, calendar, takes 2 inputs. Very simple, right? Start date and end date. That's all you need to fill. So what I will do is the start date, which is going to be a simple formula called date, like that. And here, I can manually indicate which year, month, and day my start date is going to be. Since I'm analyzing only 2015, I'm going to use 2015, January 1 and 1. Now, I'll do comma, and then space and end date, the second input in our calendar formula. And that's also going to be date. So that's 2015, and I think it was July, right? The last month, the last data we have for our sales in this data set is July 14, I believe. So we're going to take it until July 31st, only the first half of the year, right? If you have more dates, if you have several years, then you can obviously manually change it to 2020, 22, whatever. So after this, I will close the parenthesis and commit. And this is going to create a date column for my date table right here. The most important thing about the date table is that the date table has a unique value for each date. This means we can create a one-to-many relationship between the date table and the fact table. So this is going to be my date column. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come here under the table tools, and then I'm going to mark this column as a date table. So this table as a date table. So I'll do mark as date table. And then I'll click on, and then I only have one column. So now Power BI will recognize that this is my date column in the date table. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I will create some additional columns for my date table. I'll be using DAX to create these, so these are going to be simple formulas also, right? So I will come to the table tools, and then I will click new column. And the first column I'm going to create is year. And it's a simple year formula. Right here, we have IntelliSense. Power BI is pretty good at detecting and identifying and suggesting you the formula that you want to use. So just click Tab, and that will automatically select that formula, right? And here, the formula is year, and it's very simple. In brackets, what I need to do is I need to identify my date column. I'm going to type in date, and then it's going to, IntelliSense is going to give me the option, right? Which is the date column from the date table. Just like that. And I commit, and the the year column will be created. All right, let's create another column. I'm going to go new column. And this time it's going to be month. So I'm going to call it month. Actually, there's one thing I got to do before I create the month column, because the month can have two different values, right? You can have a month as a number, like January would be 1, February would be 2, etc. And then you can have a text value, like, for example, January in actual letters, in human format, right? So I'm going to start creating this the column called month number. And this is important. I'll show that to you later. You understand that. So this is going to be called month. And again, I'm indicating the date column from my date table. Like this. And I'm going to create the column called month. And here I have the numbers. So I have 1 for January, 2 for February, etc. Now I'm going to create another column. So I'm going to click new column. And this is going to be month name. So this is going to be actually a text column. Month name. And here, I can't use the month function, right? I've already used that. Now, this is going to be actually a different a different function called format. And the format basically converts a value to a text. Every DAX formula has this little description, right? You can read and understand what that does. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to indicate a column that I wanna convert into a text, right? And then that's going to be date. And the format is going to be quotation marks and then MMM, 3 M's. And this is a standard formatting used in Power BI, right? There's a documentation you can look up. So if you do 3 M's, for example, the format is going to be just first 3 letters of a month. Now, if I wanted to have a full name of a month, then I can put 4 M's. And that's going to give me a full name of a month, like January, for example. All right, another column that we will create, I'm going to click new column, is the day. You probably have already guessed how to do that. So it's going to be a day formula right here, day, and then I indicate my date column. This is going to extract all of the days, from my date column. Now I will create 2 more columns for a week, because I want to be, in my analysis, I would like to analyze my data weekly. Similar to a month, right? Because it's going to be a text value, I will first create the week number, and then based on that week number, I will create the actual week. So that's going to be called week number. And the function is, you have guessed it, week number. So date, return type is going to be 1. So that's basically, I'm starting from week 1. Some companies have their calendar, starting from July 1st. So in this case, they're going to have to format it a little bit differently, right? So their first week starts with first week of July. So, and then after I have this, I can create my last column for now, and it's going to be the proper week column. So I'm calling this week. So I'm going to be using this this technique here where I'll be attaching two different functions. Well, not functions, but the first one is going to be just a text value. So I'll open the quotation marks and then I type in week. And then I'll be using this and number, right? The and sign, which is Shift 7 for most keyboards. And then the actual formula is going to be format. And I'm going to be formatting the week number column that I created previously. Locale, I don't have to worry about it really. Well, I can just put kind of 0 here. All right. So you see now I created week 1, week 2, etc. I think my formatting is a little bit wrong. So if I do 1, that's going to... Yeah, there we go. I fixed it. Now, one thing I forgot to do is actually a space. So I'll come back here and after my word week, I will just put space. And this way I can have space in here. So I have week space, the number of the week. And you see that the number is actually taken from this column here. So I created the week number column and then I'm just basically extracting the number of the week and creating the text column with the number of the week and the actual word week. So now I have created my date table. I can go to the relationship view, the model view, sorry. And what I am going to do is I will select the date column and I'm going to build a relationship with my fact table for the date of sale. So I created a relationship between the date table and the fact sales table using the column date and the date of sale. So now I have my model ready, right? I can zoom out a little bit and see. So I have 3 tables here. I have fact, car sales table with the facts, with the sales of my cars. I have the model table and I have the date table. Now that we have created a data model connecting all 3 tables with each other, it's time to start creating calculations based on our business requirements. The business logic could be very different depending on your business's needs. In our example, in this video, we're going to create some basic and most commonly used calculations. Now, in Power BI, to create a calculation, you need to create a measure written in DAX language. So let's start with some simple measures first. Let me move this data pane to the left so you can see better what my columns are, what my tables are. I'm going to go to my fact sales table. And under the Table Tools tab, I'm going to find the New Measure button. So I'm going to click on this New Measure button and create my first measure. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right. So the very first measure that I'm going to create is going to be called total sales. And this is similar to Excel, right? If I want to calculate the sales total and filter the sales numbers by brand, model, etc., year, then I can create the measure called total sales. In my model, now let me go back to my model here for a second. All right, so here I have the column called selling price. Each car that I sold or my company sold has had a certain price. So if I sum all of the values from this column, then I should get the total sales. So I'm going to go back to the report view and select my measure here again. And I'm going to be summing that. So that's a fact table and the column called selling price. So all I'm doing is basically I'm summing that column. And now I created total sales measure. I can put it right away. So I'm going to put a card so I can see what I'm creating. I like to do that. So I will put this visual right here in the middle of my canvas and use that measure which I just created. And that's going to show me this this value, right? This big 3.3 billion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the format pane here under the call out value. I'm going to find the option called display units, and I'm going to use none because I want to see all of the full value of the measure which I created. So then it's not formatted properly, so let's go ahead and format it. So I'm gonna select my measure which I created, and then here I have a few formatting options, right? So under the format I can choose a currency because it's the dollar value. I'm summing the price. All right, so this is now a lot better formatting. Now let me create a couple more basic measures. I can copy and paste my visual right here. Select my fact table and then create another measure. So I'm going to go new measure. And this measure is going to be called average price. This is going to be a simple average formula. All I need to do is indicate the column name. So that's selling price, I believe it's called. Yes, selling price. So this formula average is going to calculate the average of my selling price. So my measure is now created. So I can remove this total sales measure and then put the new one right here. Let's do formatting. So average price is also currency. So I'm going to select currency format, and this is going to give me a proper dollar value format. But one thing I forgot to do is I will come to the decimals and I will indicate manually that I want to have no decimals. So it's $18,000, almost $19,000 for an average price of the car in the table. Now, lastly, let's create another measure. So I'll copy and paste, and this is going to be the number of cars sold. Now, if I go back to my table, in my table I have each record is a car sold. Then to find out how many vehicles I sold, all I have to do is to count the number of rows in my table. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come to my fact table and then create a measure. New measure. And for this, I will name this measure number of sold cars. And the formula is going to be count rows. Basically, I'm counting the rows in my table. That's it, right? And the table is going to be fact. Very simple formula. All I'm doing is I'm counting the number of rows in my table. And then I will replace this measure with the count rows. And then that's going to be a whole number. It's already set as a whole number. All I need is 1,000 separator. So I have a nice looking formatting. All right. As you start creating more measures, and in reality you can have a lot of measures, your table will start looking kind of cluttered. It will be hard for you to find measures or columns in that table. To avoid this, it's recommended to create a separate table in which you can store all measures separately. The easiest way to create a measures table is you're going to go to the Home tab, and then here select Enter Data. And that's going to open this window here for creating a table. So you can call that right away. I like to call this underscore measures, because if you put underscore, then this table is always going to be on top of your list. And then here, all you need to do is just click load, and this will load an empty table to your data model. So I'm going to open that table right here. If I go to my measures table, it's an empty table. Now, what I can do is I'm going to go to the model view, This is my table here. What I can do now is I can select these measures, which I created, and then move these measures, which I created, to the measures table. To do that, I can select the measure and then go to the properties section here. And in the properties section here, you can change the name of the measure as well as the table, the home table where the measure lives. So by default, it's a fact table, right? But I can select and I can put it into the measures table right here. That measure is going to move to my measures table. The same thing with my other measures. So select and move it to measures. And then the total sales measure, I'm going to do the same thing. Now the measures have been moved. You can see that all three measures now live in a separate table called measures. So I'm going to go back here, and what I will do is I will remove the empty column called column 1. So I'm going to go to 3 dots here and then delete from model. So I'm going to delete the empty column from my measures table. Okay. Now I only have measures in my table, right? That's a good way to keep measures separately and keep measures organized. Now in this section of a video, I will be creating more measures, so more calculations, and then putting them into visuals and actually creating a report. Let's do that together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will resize these cards that I have. So in my report, these cards are going to be on the top part of my report. And the easiest way to do that is actually, what I like to do is I will select the card, and then I'll close the filters pane so I have more real estate to work with. I'm going to go to a format pane and then select the general. Under the general group of properties, I'm going to select the effects, and then I will turn on the shadow. So that way, right, I can see where my visual ends. Instead of this, bare white color where I don't know where the visual ends, right? Now I have the indication of that, so that's an actual shadow, right? A shade. So then what I can do is I can use the Format Painter option, and then I can do the same for the other two visuals. Now, let's actually reduce the size. So I'm going to come to the Format pane, and then in the search bar, let me drag this a little bit to the left. In the search bar, I'm going to type in the word size, right? And that's going to find all of the features related to size. And I am going to change this font to, let's say, 24. Should be enough. 24 is good. And after that, I will go to the general properties and then resize the size of the visual manually. So I'd like to make this 115 to 250. That's the size I want to have. And then I can do the same for other visuals. All right, so after having these cards on top of our screen, let's actually introduce our first visual. So I can choose a normal bar chart. Let me put the total sales. So that's going to be our total sales. And let's say we can also have the time dimension, right? Going from left to right. So I can put month. So I have my month on the x-axis, right? And then the total sales on the y-axis. Now we can see right away that there's an error here, right? This is not sorted properly. We have the alphabetic sorting instead of how it should be, right? So we have February 1st and then January and then June. That's weird. Let me show you something. Let's go to the date column here. And that's because Power BI actually sees the month name column as a text value, which it is, right? And February alphabetically is before January. But that's not what we want to do, right? So that's why we actually created the column called month number. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually select the month name column. And what I'm going to do is I will sort it by another column. That's why I created the column called month number, because I can now sort using the number of the month, not its name. Its name could be anything, right? It could be in French, it could be in Spanish, or any other language. It doesn't matter. As long as the month number is 1 and for January and 2 for February and 3 for March, then I'm going to have a proper sorting. So what I'm going to do here, I will select the month number manually. And now this month name column is going to be sorted by the month number. So now this is done, so I can go back and this should be fixed. It's not, so I can, in this case, I can remove it. Sorry, I removed the total sales. I can remove it and put it back in. I have January, February, March, etc. When you have time values, it's recommended to display them from left to right on a visual. It just makes sense to most people and makes it easier to understand. Now, this isn't a video about visualization in Power BI. There's a lot of information about design and how visuals should look like, but the most important thing is that your visuals should make sense. They should not be overly complicated, and one visual should ideally convey one message. At the end of the day, it's not about how beautiful your visuals are or how complex you can make them. It's about other people reading and understanding information. So if most people cannot understand information on your visual within 5 to 10 seconds, that means you are not doing a good job at visualizing your data. Now let me improve my bar chart a little bit, so I will add shadow. And what I'm going to do is I also would like to add weeks under month and then maybe days. So what I can do is I can come to my date table right here, and then I can find the column called week, and I'm going to put it under the month, like so. And so that way, if I wanted to, I can see the sales by weeks, like that. So it's going to be week 7, and then I can go back. To enable the drill through feature, you first have to have a hierarchy on the axis that you would like to drill through, right? So I have month and then week. I can also add a day. And then here I will have the drill through mode will be activated. So when I click to February, for example, then I'm going to go down one level and see it by weeks. Let me show you how this works. So I will add days in here. So that's going to be below weeks, like that. And now I can see daily. And here's, I'm going to go up and go up to see monthly level. Now I'm going to improve a little bit this visual. So I'm actually going to change this to the line and stacked column chart. So it's actually, sorry, not this. I'm going to select my visual here and then change it. And this visual here has more details, right? So I can add the number of cars sold as a line right here. All right, so this is a little bit more complex now. So I can go to, for example, May, drill down and see information weekly. And then I can click to week 22, for example, and then I can see the days. Now let's continue and actually let me drag this all the way to take the entire screen, right? And now I can add another visuals to finish up this page. Let me actually call this page basic visuals or basic calculations rather. And what I can do is I like to use this tree map here. And this is a good visual to indicate data by different categories. For this report, I would like to use total sales. And I would like to filter it by state, like this. So I can see that Florida and California and Texas and Pennsylvania, right, they have the most amount of cars sold. So that's one of the visuals that you can use. Now let me put another visual here. I'll move this a little bit here, and what I want to have is I want to put another visual here, a bar chart, and that's going to be a car brand and the number of cars sold. So that's going to be a list of cars from top to bottom, like this. It's important not to overcrowd your report. The more visuals you have, the more confusing it becomes. So I wouldn't really use more than 5-6 visuals per page. It's much better just to create another page and put additional information on that second page rather than cluttering your report with too much information. So here I have the cars, right? The car models, the number of cars sold by brand. So let me add a shadow here. And let me add a shadow here as well. So these are some basic formatting, right? Obviously, you can do much more advanced formatting. You can change the name of your titles. You can change the colors. You can change the font. You can change a lot of things in Power BI. All right, let me move these a little bit to the left so I can have more space for my visual right here. I updated my data set a little bit so it makes more sense. It was too random before, right? So I added a couple details here and there. Either way, let's continue with this. Like I said before, it's important not to overcrowd your page with too many visuals. At the end of the day, the human eye can only comprehend so many things. That being said, I already have enough visuals on my page as is, so I will create a new page. The easiest way is to duplicate an existing page right here and then call this Advanced Calculations. Or, whatever your page name makes sense for you. So this helps you to build reports faster. Now, instead of creating reports pages from scratch, when you copy previous page, then you can leave certain elements on the report. It's just faster and easier to work with. For example, I can leave these cards on top of my report, to have some consistency. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to use the same bar chart, but without the line chart. And then instead of the month, I'd like to see the analysis by color. So which colors of cars are more popular than others? To do this, I will replace x-axis with the color. Let me drag this a little here. So it's in the car model. All right, and then I will remove the total sales, and instead I just would like to see the number of cars sold. Let me actually remove this and remove this visual right here and work with this bar chart, the number of sold cars by color. Now, when you have a large number of categories, like in this example, sometimes it makes sense to show a certain number of top-ranked categories. It will look better in analysis, especially if the tail end of these smaller categories are insignificant compared to the top half of it. To do this, you can go to the filter pane right here. In the color, you will choose top N. Then you will indicate the number of the top ranked categories or items that you want to show in your visual. And then right here, you're just going to show it by the number of cars sold. So you will choose the value and then you will click apply and the filter will be applied. In this case, we're only going to see the top 8 colors. All right, then I will close the filter pane. And then the next visual that we're going to use is the pie chart. It's right here. And let's put it in this top right corner. You should use the pie chart carefully and make sure that you do not have too many categories. Otherwise, the visual can become more confusing than it is helpful. This is what I'm saying. So if I put the number of cars sold, and then I added, for example, the model name, then this just doesn't make any sense, right? This is absolute chaos. Nobody can understand what's going on here. So that's why when you're using a pie chart, you should always be careful and think about what kind of categories you want to show. In this case, I was thinking about condition. And I'm going to put it into legends. And I only have 5 categories, right? I only have 5 categories. And condition is basically, I believe in this data set, 5 is like the higher the score of a condition, the better quality the car is. So either way, right, I only have 5 categories. So in this case, pie chart or a donut chart right here can be, a good choice. But if you have more categories than that, then it doesn't make sense. Then it will look like the previous example that I showed you. Now let's create another visual, and this time it's going to be a horizontal bar chart. This one here. Oops. Sorry, I replaced it. When adding a new visual, it's important to click on an empty canvas, because if you have a visual selected and then you clicked on another visual, then that visual will replace the other one, right? So you do not want to do that. And that's why it's important that you unselect the visual by clicking onto a white space. And now I can add a new visual. That's going to be a horizontal bar chart. I'm going to put it in here. To use this visual, I created a new measure here, which is called average time on lot. And let's take a look at the formula here. And here's the formula, right? This formula takes each sale record and finds the number of days, the difference between manufacturing date and the sale date. It calculates that for all the cars in my fact table, and then calculates the average for all cars. So if I put this into my bar chart, and then I added the model name of my car, like this, right here we can see the average time each car model spent on the lot before it got purchased. And here's the list of all the cars. And you can see that some car models are more popular than the others. You can see that some car models get purchased faster than others. And let me move these visuals a little bit to the left so I have more space to show you another visual. And this is going to be a scatter chart. This one here. Here's the scatter chart. So we will use the scatter chart to visualize the relationship between the condition of cars and their average price. Let's do that. So to do this, I will find the column called condition. It should be right here. So condition is going to be in one axis. I will make sure not to summarize this one here. Okay. And then I'm going to put average price on another axis. And I will also add the number of cars sold. Like this. So by looking at this visual, we can see that the better the condition of the car, the more expensive the car was, right? And the greater number of cars were sold. For condition 1 and 2, right, which are bad quality cars, the average price is less than 16,000, for example, here. I think that makes perfect sense. Now, I'm going to create another page and show you some more advanced calculations and features. So I called this page Advanced Calculations, and I've already created a simple matrix here. So I added month in rows, month names, and total sales as columns, right? So in this matrix, I'll be using this matrix to display basic time intelligence calculations. So what I'm going to do here, I will add a slicer right here, in which I'm going to indicate the car models, the models of my cars. So that's going to be the model name. And so all of my car models are in here, right? And so I can filter by car models to see the sales for, each car model. Very often we want to see how our sales performed each month, right? And what was the increase or decrease compared to the previous month. It is usually a measure which is shown in percentage. This will be a two-step process because to create a month-over-month calculation, I need to have a measure that will calculate and show me the previous month. So for each month, I would like to see the previous month's sales. So we're going to create this measure, right? Let's go to our measures folder right here and then go new measure. We're going to call this previous month sales. And this is going to be the calculate of my total sales. And I'm using the formula called date add, in which I'm going to indicate my date -1 and for -1 month. So let me explain the logic of this formula. Here, the date add calculates a new date by subtracting a specific number of months from a given date. For example, from today, we go back 1 month from today's date. We use this function inside the calculate function to see the sales data for that specific month. So let me commit and create the measure and add it to my matrix. Let's format it as a currency. And here we can see that in February, for example, right, I'm seeing the previous month. And in March, I'm seeing the February, etc., right? But we will not be using this measure in this matrix. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. But this will be an intermediary measure, so we can create a month-over-month calculations. So now I have this intermediary measure, right? I can use it to create a new measure, which is the actual month-over-month calculations. So I'm going to call this month-over-month %. And this is going to be a simple divide formula. What I'm doing here, I'm dividing the numerator. In the numerator, I'm going to have total sales minus previous month. And we're going to divide that by previous month. I mean, this is basic % calculation. So we do this, and then I'm going to add this to my matrix. This is going to be a %, like this, and I can remove the previous month from my matrix, like this. And now I have a month-over-month % growth, or not growth, but the reduction, right, for each data. Here I can see that. Now let me calculate running totals, right? I can create running totals, running sales totals, and running total for the number of cars sold. I can use standard DAX, right, and calculate that. But in this part of the video, I'd like to show you a new feature in Power BI that actually just came out last month. It's called Visual Calculations. And this new feature is still in preview, but users can already start testing it. So to do that, right, to use this new feature, it's called Visual Calculations. And what a visual calculation is a DAX formula which is written on a visual. It's a DAX formula or a calculation that exists in the visual. It does not exist in your data model, and you can have it for each visual separately. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's real cool. So first thing what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, and you're going to go to Options and Settings. And here you're going to go to Options. And once you are in the Options setting, you're going to find Preview Features right here. And then right here, scroll down, and then you will find Visual Calculations feature. You can see that I have already turned this on. And then what this is going to do is this is going to create this button right here, which says New Calculation. You can also access this by right-clicking on your matrix, right, or on your visual, and this will have a feature called New Calculation. So I'm going to click, and this is going to bring up this little window. The logic here is you don't have to write complex DAX here. Instead, you can use simple calculations, or you can also use these formulas which are given to you. These are standard calculations that most people use. And let me click onto this, and then here I have a few options. Again, this feature is in preview, and I'm sure more formulas will be getting added, and this feature itself probably will improve dramatically, right, from today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to calculate running total. And here I can give the name of my measure. So I'm going to call this running sales total. And here in the field section, I will indicate the measure which I'm going to use, which is total sales. So I will do this, and right away, I will see this running total calculated right on my visual, right here. After calculating the running sales total, I will do another visual calculation, and that's going to be, for example, let's do percent of grand total. I'd like to see how each month performed against the total. What was the percentage of January? What was the percentage of February, and etc. So here, percent of grand total, that's the name of my measure. So the divide, this is going to be my total sales, right? And then here, this should be also total sales actually. The axis should be rows. Let me do rows right here. Now let's see if this works, if this makes any sense, and it does. You can see that the grand total is 1, and I can see the percent for each month. For example, January was 24% of all sales. So now I can go back here in my report. These visual calculations are sitting only in my visual, in my matrix. They do not exist in my data model. You can see that I don't have them in the measures. I don't have them in any other of my tables. You know, if I wanted to, I can save these measures. If I don't like it for some reason, I can either hide them or I can just remove them altogether. It's very simple to create these visual calculations. You don't even need to know much DAX. It just makes a lot more sense and geared toward the business users. I'm still learning this new feature, and at this point, I have not found where you can format these visual calculations. For example, I wanted to put like a dollar sign here, and then I wanted to put a percent sign. If I click here, I don't see the formatting option. Maybe the formatting option is not available yet. I don't know. This remains to be researched more. So if you happen to find these, please let me know in the comment section. I'd be very interested myself, right, to know how I can format the new visual calculations feature. After we've finished building the report, the last thing we're going to do today is to save our report and publish it to a workspace in Power BI service. Let's do that. For that, you can come here and click the button Publish. I've already saved my report with this name, Power BI End-to-End Basic. And then for the workspace to publish, I will choose my own personal workspace. I mean, in reality, you will have different workspaces from which you can choose from. So I'm going to do Select. And my Power BI report is now getting published. All right, now it's done, so I can click to this link, and this is going to take me to Power BI service. After I publish my Power BI report to Power BI service, I can find it in my workspace right here. So this is the exact report which I just built using Power BI Desktop. It has all of the 3 pages that I had right here. And before I go forward, it makes sense to discuss differences between Power BI Desktop and Power BI Service. Here's a simple Excel table which I put together, highlighting the key features and differences between, the two Power BI elements. So Power BI Desktop right here is primarily used for creating and designing reports and data models. It's a local application with a lot of features used for data import, transformation, modeling, and visualization. So everything that we have done today, essentially, right? So we have imported data from different Excel files, then we cleaned and transformed data, and then we created a data model, calculations, and finally visualized our data in 3 pages. Now for these kinds of tasks, Power BI Desktop is ideal, and it was actually built exactly for that, right? So it's a local application which you can open from your computer. And now, once you have built everything in Power BI Desktop, you want to publish your report and share it with your colleagues, right? Or with other people. And here comes Power BI Service. Power BI Service is a cloud-based service for sharing, viewing, and interacting with reports created in desktop. So Power BI Service allows collaboration, distribution, and managing security. Now let's go back to the report in Power BI Service. We're going to take a quick look at some of the key features that are available in Power BI Service. Now in the File section, you can download this file and open it locally using Power BI Desktop. So if you have Power BI Desktop installed on your machine, you can download this file from the cloud, given that you have access, of course. Apart from being able to download this file, you can manage permissions. Here you can indicate who can access your report and what kind of access rights these people will have. In the File section, you can also print this page or this report, right? There are other options here, but they are not in scope of this video, right? We're going to talk about it later. Then here's a tab called Export. This is a very helpful feature for a lot of us. Using this, you can export data and open it in Excel if you wish, or you can also create presentations in PowerPoint or PDF. You can also share. Sharing is probably the most important feature here. You can share and distribute your reports using this button. You can select people from your organization, or you can identify specific people and share the report with them. Once you apply this and send them the link, Power BI is going to send these people an email notifying that a report was shared with them, and then they can open your report using that link. Using this feature here, Chat in Teams, you can embed this into your Teams chat, and you can have, well, I need to connect first to my Teams and establish authentication and that kind of stuff. I will not be doing that now. But if I did, right, this report can be embedded in a Teams chat, and with my colleagues, I can discuss some of the changes or editing or whatever details I want about this report in the Teams. Now, another thing here is Set Alert. Using this feature, you can create email notifications and or team alerts if and when certain conditions are met. For example, if you get new data and your report gets updated, you can set up a trigger that will fire an email to you and other people who follow or have access to this report when the data reaches a certain condition. For example, when your sales reach 1 million, you would want to have a notification. Now, lastly, let's take a look at the button here called Edit. You can enter the Edit mode. And in the Edit mode, you can modify your report, albeit in a limited way. For example, you cannot create measures, tables, or relationships, but you can add new visuals, right? You can, for example, come here, and then you can add another visual. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back. I didn't want to do this. So you can add a new report, and you can put your months in here, and for example, your sales, like that. So you can create new visuals, and you can modify existing visuals in the edit mode of Power BI Service. However, you can't create new measures using Power BI Service. You're still going to have to go back to Power BI Desktop. So to be able to access the edit mode, you must have appropriate editing rights. So this means not everyone can or should have access to the edit mode. When you share your report with a large number of viewers, it is recommended that you do not provide them the edit access, but only a view access, so people can only look at your report, but not really change it, right? You don't want to do that. So now I can save my report. So when I go to the reading view, which is the default mode, it asks me to save my changes. So I can go ahead and save this report as another report with a different name, And in this case, the changes that I made in the edit mode will be saved, right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go back to the reading mode. Now keep in mind that if you make changes in Power BI service using the edit mode, and then someone republishes the Power BI desktop file onto the cloud, you will lose your changes unless you save your file using a different name. Now, if I saved my report with the same name, and then somebody had my local file, Power BI X, and opened that file using Power BI Desktop, and then made whatever changes they made, and then republish my original report to the Power BI Cloud, to Power BI Service, then my changes will be lost. So that is something you should be careful about. All right, that's it. So this was an introduction to Power BI. We looked at all main steps of building a simple Power BI report. First, we imported two files. One of them was Excel and another a CSV file. Then we created a calendar table using DAX. And then we built a data model by creating relationships between the three tables. Then finally, we created business calculations using DAX and visualized our data using different Power BI visuals. As the last step, we saved our report and published it to Power BI Service. In this video, we used a very simple data set, but it's not the point, right? The objective was to learn how to build a Power BI report from scratch, and during our tutorial, we covered all steps of building a Power BI report. I will provide the sample dataset in the description section of this video. Again, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like our style of teaching, please give us a like, as more videos and tutorials will be coming out. Until then, take care of yourself, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.